In 1945, a discovery was made that certain religious authorities had spent centuries trying to prevent. Not a rumor, not a theory whispered in some forum. Actual buried texts, sealed in a jar, hidden underground for over 1,600 years. And once scholars finally cracked them open and translated what was inside, it became clear why someone wanted them gone. These weren't forgeries. They weren't nonsense. They were early Christian writings, gospels, letters, teachings that never made it into the Bible, you know. Ever wonder why? You've probably heard the standard story of Christ. Born, taught, died, resurrected, saved humanity. Clean, simple, repeated for 2,000 years. But there was another version of this story, older in some ways, deeper in others, that got pushed underground so hard it took 2 millennia to resurface. Today, I want to walk you through that buried version. Not to tear anything down, but because I think you deserve to know what was hidden and why. And by the end of this, you might start to see your own soul a little differently. Stick with me. This gets strange fast. Before I go further, you need one word. Just one. Everything else hangs off of it. That word is Pleroma, Greek for the fullness. Not heaven the way you were taught, with gates and clouds. Something bigger. The Pleroma was described as the true divine realm, the source reality where the fullness of the divine lives, undivided and complete. Here's my honest opinion, and I'll say it early. I believe the word God has been flattened by centuries of translation, squeezed into a single figure on a single throne. But the earliest mystics writing about the Pleroma weren't describing a person sitting somewhere. They were describing a state, a totality, an ocean of divine fullness that everything, including you, is a droplet of. Sit with that, not a servant of the divine. A droplet of it. One of the key minds behind this teaching was Valentinus, a 2nd century teacher based in Alexandria, Egypt, and by most historical accounts, one of the most brilliant Christian thinkers of his era. Some records suggest he was nearly chosen to lead the entire Roman Church before his teachings were rejected as too mystical, too dangerous. A man who almost held enormous religious power was instead pushed out because he refused to simplify the mystery. Valentinus taught the Pleroma wasn't one being, but many divine emanations called aeons, paired forces flowing from an unknowable source. Wisdom, mind, truth, word, life, together the fullness. And here's where this stops being abstract. Because according to this teaching, everything that exists, including the spark inside you right now, originally belonged there. Whole, home. So what happened? Why does this world feel so far from full? That question got a lot of ancient teachers labeled heretics. Now it gets uncomfortable, because this part of the story was told about a woman. Her name was Sophia, Greek for wisdom. In this tradition, she wasn't a metaphor. She was one of the aeons, dwelling inside the fullness with everyone else. But Sophia wanted to know the source directly, not through her partner aeon, not through the proper order, on her own. She reached for direct knowledge of the unknowable root of all things. And something broke. Versions differ, but the thread is the same. Her unchecked desire caused a rupture. A fall. Out of it came something imperfect, a being shaped by longing and lack, not completion. Here's my take, and it's not the traditional one. I don't read this as a punishment story. I read it as maybe the oldest metaphor we have for what curiosity costs. Reaching past what you're ready for. I think every person alive has felt some version of that ache, reaching for something bigger and coming back changed. Because you felt this before, even without the name. That sense of being cut off. That quiet feeling that you used to be whole, and somewhere along the way, stopped being it. That's not just poetry. In this tradition, it's cosmology. Something that happened to you, on a soul level, long before this body. Sophia's fall is the crack in the glass. Through that crack, something else was born. Something that would build the entire physical world you're sitting in right now. That's next. It might change how you look at reality. So who actually built the world you're living in? According to this tradition, not who you probably think. Out of Sophia's fall came a being. These texts call him the Demiurge, Greek for craftsman. Born without awareness of the Pleroma he came from, he doesn't know it exists. Several texts say he believes he's the only God, the highest power, the one true source. He isn't evil exactly. He's blind. A craftsman working from incomplete blueprints, shaping matter, law, and order, mistaking his limited authority for ultimate authority. Here's what I think is one of the most important ideas buried in all of this. The Demiurge fashions the physical world, matter, bodies, time, decay. Not the Pleroma. A lesser copy of it, real but incomplete. I want to be careful. This isn't a swipe at any modern religion. This is ancient philosophical thought, and it deserves to be treated as exactly that. But personally, I find this idea more powerful as a description of systems than as a literal claim. Think about every system in your life that demands total obedience, claims to be the final word, while quietly being incomplete or just wrong about its own limits. Institutions, ideologies, even the voice in your own head insisting it knows exactly who you are. That voice can act like a demiurge, confident, commanding, blind to the fullness sitting just outside its awareness. That's why this myth has survived. It's not really about a cosmic craftsman. It's about recognizing false ultimate authority when you're standing inside it. If the world was built by something that doesn't even know the true source exists, who was sent to remind you that it does? This is the part they really didn't want circulating. In the dominant version of Christianity, the one written into official councils, Christ's mission centers on sacrifice, sin, death and resurrection as payment for a cosmic debt. But in the buried texts, preserved by teachers like Valentinus and rediscovered in 1945, Christ's mission looks different. Bigger, honestly. Here, Christ is described as an emissary from the Pleroma itself, sent through the layers of a blind, incomplete cosmos for one reason: to wake people up. Not simply to forgive, to remind. The word is gnosis, Greek for direct, experiential knowledge. Not belief, secondhand. Actual first-person knowing. The core message wasn't primarily, believe in me so you're saved. It was closer to remember what you actually are, because you've forgotten, and the forgetting is the real prison. The most important proof comes from the Nag Hammadi library, that 1945 discovery. 13 leather-bound papyrus books, buried in a jar in Upper Egypt for over 1,600 years, containing dozens of early Christian texts that never made the New Testament. Gospels attributed to Thomas, Philip, Mary, teachings the era's official church decided the world shouldn't have. One of those, the Gospel of Thomas, doesn't read like a story. It's a list of sayings attributed to Christ, almost no narrative. One of its boldest lines says the kingdom you're looking for isn't out there waiting to arrive. It's already spread across the world, inside and around you, and most people simply don't see it. Read that again. Not a future reward. A present reality you were trained not to notice. Here's my honest conviction. I don't think this reading makes Christ smaller. I think it makes the mission bigger than the version most of us were handed. Not just die for humanity's sins. Something closer to pierce through the blindness of a world built by a lesser power and hand people the tool to remember where they came from. If you're built from that same divine source, what exactly is inside you right now? Here's why any of this should matter to you, sitting there right now. According to this tradition, you are not just a body that happened to grow a mind. Buried somewhere inside you is a literal fragment of the Pleroma, a piece of the original fullness. These texts call it pneuma, spirit, or more precisely, the divine spark. Not a metaphor. A claim that something eternal from the true source got planted inside human beings, wrapped in matter and forgetting, like a seed buried under years of soil. It feels buried because, according to this myth, it is. The spark doesn't arrive awake. It arrives asleep, wrapped in this world's noise, fear, distraction, everything the blind craftsman built to keep you occupied down here. Most people never suspect it's there, but some moments crack through. You know the feeling. That flash of déjà vu that stops you mid-sentence. That ache for something you can't name, unrelated to any goal or possession. That quiet certainty in your most honest moments that you're more than the roles you play. According to this tradition, that's not random brain chemistry. That's the spark stirring, trying to remember itself. I find this idea genuinely moving, and I don't think that's an accident. I believe it survived underground for 2,000 years, buried in jars and banned texts and condemned teachers, because it's true to lived human experience, whether or not you take every historical claim literally. People have always sensed there's more going on inside them than the world admits. This teaching gave that feeling a name. Gnosis isn't learning new facts. It's remembering what you already are, underneath the sleep. Christ's role, in this buried version, wasn't to create the spark or hand it to you. It was to remind you it was already there, glowing quietly under everything this world convinced you to believe about your limits. That reframes everything, doesn't it? You're not climbing toward divinity from nothing. You're remembering divinity you already carry. So if this teaching is this powerful, why did it almost vanish from history completely? The honest historical answer isn't some cartoonish conspiracy. It's more human than that and more believable. In the first few centuries after Christ, there wasn't one unified Christianity. There were dozens of competing communities, each with their own gospels, teachers, and understanding of who Christ was. The Pleroma teachings, the Sophia myth, the divine spark, part of that wider Messier landscape. Over time, through church councils and the slow formation of an official canon, one version was chosen as orthodox. The rest, including these deeply mystical teachings, were labeled heresy. Copies were destroyed. Teachers like Valentinus were pushed out of the influence they'd once nearly held. Whole communities carrying these ideas faded from history. I want to be fair. Building one structure out of chaos wasn't purely sinister. Early leaders were genuinely trying to protect a fragile movement from splintering into contradictory sections. There's real logic there. But here's my honest take. Institutions tend to prefer certainty over mystery. Certainty is easier to organize, easier to teach the same way for centuries. Mystery resists that. It asks each person to seek their own gnosis rather than receive an approved answer. A teaching that says the divine spark is already inside you, go find it, is harder to manage than one that says believe this and you'll be saved. So the Pleroma teachings didn't just fade by accident. They were, in large part, deliberately buried, likely by monks trying to protect the text from destruction, sealed in a jar and left in the Egyptian cliffs for 1600 years. Which brings us back to 1945. A discovery no one expected. A door back into a story that was never supposed to reopen. Someone thought this teaching was dangerous enough to bury. That alone tells you how powerful it actually was. So where does that leave you? I'm not asking you to throw out everything you believe. This isn't about tearing down one system to hand you another to swallow whole. That would miss the entire point of what we just walked through. The Pleroma, the fall, the Demiurge, and Christ's real reason for coming. What I am asking, sit with the idea, even just for tonight, that you might be carrying something ancient and undivided inside you. That the ache you felt, the sense there's more, that you've forgotten something, that this world sometimes feels like a beautiful but incomplete copy of something realer, might not be a flaw in you. It might be memory, your soul stirring. You don't need permission to wonder about this. You don't need approval to sit quietly and ask what parts of you feel asleep and what parts feel like they're waking up. That questioning on its own is a form of gnosis, a form of remembering. These teachings survived being buried for 1600 years, survived being labeled heresy, survived being pushed underground by the institutions that could have simply let them exist alongside everything else. And still, here you are hearing about it all this time later. Maybe that's not a coincidence. Maybe some things refuse to stay buried because enough people, generation after generation, keep sensing there's more beneath the surface of the story they were handed. So I'll leave you with the same question this whole tradition keeps circling back to. Not, what do you believe? Something quieter. What do you remember? If this pulled something loose in you, stay close. There's more of this buried story to walk through. The Gospel of Thomas alone could fill an entire video, and I think you'll want to see what's actually written in it. Subscribe if you want to be there when I open that door. Until then, stay awake.